It is no longer news. The lingering strike by the Academic Staff Union of Universities Asuu. But what is news now is the fact that parents and guardians are now resorting to taking their children and wards to private institutions or abroad with the hope of their educational careers getting a conclusive end. On the other hand, those who are not as fortunate to make the decision of switching institutions are compelled to wait in limbo for a strike action that almost has no end in sight, thereby rendering them idle and almost unemployable. But some sectors have pointed fingers at the Academic Staff Union of Universities and the fact that their actions have been more of cynical, thus throwing the educational system into cardiac arrest. Students in their final year are left to wonder when indeed they will finally graduate, while still hoping the strike is called off on or before the clock 30. And of course, we're talking about the service here now. They may not be able to do that. Freshers, however, who are awaiting admission on the other hand, are forced to wait for a call of resumption that seems to be a mirage at the moment. Who do we blame? What must be done? And how soon can it be done? These and many more questions shall form the basis of our discourse on the program today. My name is Lydia Odijochi. Welcome to Nigeria Today. Joining me to discuss the lingering Asuu strike is our usual and a friend of the house who, as a matter of fact, is of great support whenever we come calling on him, our public affairs analyst, Jide Ojo. Thank you for joining us again.
It's a pleasure, Lydia. Good evening, Nigerians.
Also joining us via Zoom is an associate professor, head of department, Political Science and International Relations, University of Abuja, Professor Sheriff Gali Ibrahim. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, Prof, let me start with you. Why has government and ASU not been able to reach a compromise over this issue of industrial action?
Well, as you can see that the Nigerian government takes everything on seriously, not even regarding educational sector, not to think of health, not to think of defense, not to think of all other aspects of the society. If you can actually go back to the structural setting of UNESCO for 31 years, it has actually stipulated that developing economies should actually spend at least 25% of their annual national budget, into education. But for the past 6 years, Nigeria has not been able to do that. Nigeria has not been able to spend even half of its annual budget, half of this particular stipulated 25%. Since 2016, to 2021, Nigeria has been only able to spend at least even less than 10%, not even up to 0.5% of the stipulation of UNESCO as it relates to contribution to education from the national budget. From 2016 to 2021, the 55.3 trillion naira, of the budgetary allocation, between 2016 and 2001, only 3.6%, out of 55.3 trillion, only just 3-point-something trillion given to education. So you can see that this is not enough, this is inadequate, this is insufficient. In fact, even Ghana spending up to about 23% of budget to education, and South Africa 16-point-something% to education, and Nigeria, the largest economy, in Africa, is unable to spend up to 10% of its annual budget. So what we are seeing here is that Nigerian government prefers to spend more, in politics, because if you see the time the primaries were conducted and comes 2023 general elections, you're going to see how much money to be spent by the political parties, the allocation to INEC itself, as well as the massive deployment of law enforcement agents, in order to secure ballot, and the securitization of this particular polling unit, sometimes comes to no avail. Why? Because the colossal amount of money spent in order to protect ballot, to conduct elections, finally the result of democracy are not actually obtainable and are not actually felt by the common man. So that is why whatever you see about Nigerian government, there is spirit and evidence of lack of seriousness attached to it. Remember that education is the most overhead, because there is nothing you can achieve without knowledge, without education. And think of the research opportunities that have been missing by Nigerian academics, in 4 months. They are even trying to survive, not to think of even undergoing or carrying out research that will actually pave a way for development, in this particular nation. So I think the government must actually make a shift, in the way it actually approaches education and all other aspects and sectors of the society. Because democracy
let me come in here. I know that Jide Ojo really wants to react. He said a lot of things. He brought about facts and figures to buttress his own point of view. How would you react to what he said so far?
Well, I don't need to react to what Dr. Sharif has said. Suffice to say that it's heartrending that we have a system collapse in the education sector. It's just it's like the national grid of our electricity that have been collapsing every now and again. Mm-hmm. But you see, at the heart of all this crisis is our premium, the premium that is paid on human capital development. Mm-hmm. Because you cannot claim to be placing priority on human capital development and millions of your students who are actually the leaders of tomorrow will be willy-nilly, willfully, and maliciously kept at home. What is at the heart of the matter with Asuu? 2009 agreement that was signed after a prolonged and protracted strike. That agreement was sealed and signed. This agreement was renegotiated in 2013. If you recall, in 2020, Asuu went on strike for about 10 months. The reason why the impact of that 2020 strike was not felt was because it coincided with the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown, and it was inadvisable to even have schools open because globally many institutions have to shut down and classes were taken online. But from March to December of 2020, Asuu was on strike. This again was called off after a protracted period. Now, Asuu gave all the notices to prevent the current strike, which took effect around March. The government ignored it, claiming that it has no money. But the same government could vote 4 trillion for fuel subsidy, in one budget. Asuu is not asking for that much. And even if Asuu is asking for 1 trillion, it is to the benefit of government itself. What is the quality of Nigerian graduates now? We are producing not even half-baked, quarter-baked graduates. You will see, Lydia, you will see the quality of some graduates when you interview them for jobs. You know they are unemployable. They're simply unemployable because some of them cannot even write
a sentence.
Their details, as in their, if you say write your details now, they will be asking you, what do you mean by details? As in, they don't even let them fill a form, a form for you. You will see typos. And these are graduates of English, graduates of social sciences, graduates of engineering. And these are people we entrust with our lives as medical doctors. These are people we expect to bring about infrastructural development as engineers, to build our bridges and our roads. So the import of Asuu strike is such that when you go abroad for further studies, maybe you did your first degree in Nigeria today, and you want to go to UK for postgraduate study, you will find out that many of them could not even be taken in because they failed qualifying exams. So even though many parents now are looking at raising funds from wherever they can in order to send their wards and children to private schools, private universities and all of them, or send them abroad, how many, what's the ratio of Nigerians that could afford that? Now, the fear we should have, Lydia, the fear we should have is that the majority whose parents are poor, could not afford to send them to private institutions, will pose a threat to the children of the rich that could afford to do so. That is why today you see an average, many of the kidnappers, abductors that have been arrested. If you listen to them, they speak good English.
Yes.
Many of them are either undergraduates or graduate students who have no job. So they've constituted nuisance on the rest of us. In these 4 or 5 months that also have been on strike, just imagine what has been keeping those students busy. Is it positive things? Is it negative things? There is a popular saying that the idle hand is the devil's workshop. Many of these students now have joined other internet scam gang, defrauding people online. Many of the girls have either become, baby mothers through, unwanted pregnancies, or they have simply turned themselves to prostitutes.
Yes.
Some have positively engaged themselves by going to learn skills.
Yes.
Tailoring, fashion designing, how to bake cake, how to repair phones and all of that. But those who are in this category, if we are to take an opinion survey, may be in the minority. Yes, so, but we are not concerned about the minority. We are concerned about the majority. Because now, if you put the population of Nigeria's public universities together, they are in millions. If we have only 20% learning skills and 80% of them going into crimes and criminality, you can see that the society is endangered. So this is the implication that government should have known and see how to at least cut short, because they have not averted. We can't be talking of averting it. They have not averted. A semester has been lost. I have nieces, I have nephews in public universities. There is one of them that is in final year. Today, he's been at home for 4 months.
Okay,
it's not fair.
It's really not a very good situation, but we'll talk more. Let's take a break. We'll be back.
Apart from students being at home, you find out that time keeps going, and then they approach the age of 30, of which a child is exempted from NYSC. What he is supposed to render to his country, he's not. And apart from that, if you go to the labor market, most jobs that are advertised, they normally place it that if you're above 30 years, that you are not qualified. So you find out that children are just redundant. They're at home for a fault that is not their own.
Employment nowadays is just based on the highest bidder, or who do you know. And how do we curtail that? When the proper thing have to be put in place, when students are graduated at the appropriate time, there will be no corruption. What is even the issue of what even bring the corruption? Because you have to go and validate your date of birth to suit in the purpose of where they are looking for the employment.
Yeah, sure. If I get the opportunity to change institution, yeah, I will. Of course, I will. Yes, because after the strike, it's not like when they call it off now, you could not still go on another strike. So yeah, I will. I would consider going to another school. I would go to another school if I get the opportunity.
I'm not planning to cross carpet to a private university. That plan was there, but I just looked and said, cross carpet is going to give me more years again too. So it's just like the same thing. So I just better stay where I am and wait it out, And then the employability issue, about the age range of employers and all those things, 26, 27. Another thing that affects employability too is value, what one can offer, and that's what I'm doing with this period, adding value to myself, learning some skills, so that even with the age issue, I can still be employable, and I can also employ myself.
Welcome back. The program is still Nigeria Today. We are discussing the lingering Asuu strike. I'm still with my guest, Jide Ojo, public affairs analyst, and Dr. Sheriff Gali Ibrahim, an associate professor, head of Department Political Science and International Relations, University of Abuja. Now, Doctor, I want you to react to the respondents there. You listen to them. How would you react to what they had to say?
Well, it actually pains me because it is painful for me to be a citizen of Nigeria and experience 4 stages of Nigeria's development, which I always reiterate. One, the era of construction in which educational sector, so many schools were actually built, starting from the early stage of Nigeria's journey. Secondly, the era in which the military began to suspend even schools. Whenever there was a military coup, nobody goes to school because there were, curfews, imposed. People will not actually be able to go out. Suspension, even the constitution suspended. The era of subversion in which corruption began to eat into the, fabric of the society, even within the educational sector. Now the era of destruction in which Nigerians destroy Nigeria, as well as the government also destroy Nigeria for not giving adequate and proper support to educational institutions. Now what we are saying is that with the 4 months of Asuu strike, remember that the lecturers in tertiary institutions need to feed in this particular period of, rising nature of cost of living. They need to pay school fees for their children. They need to pay hospital bills, power bills. They also need to pay water bills. But the invocation of the labor law, no work, no pay, is that going to solve corruption in Nigeria? You discover that you see such lecturers calling their students to give them support. And if such is given, tell me, when they return, why should they not give free marks for the student to pass, even though without the effort of the student? This is a great implication and repercussion in our educational sector. The government has been so blind and not able to see. Apart from this, students are out of school, just like my colleague here made mention of our female students engaging into prostitution. I think the government want to see any bastard children, given birth to in this particular period between now and, end of the year. Why? Because the students are not actually engaged in classes. The parents are lacking in so many essentials for serving humanity, even for survival. What do you expect? They have to go out and, look for a means, of survival. Then apart from this, it also paves a way for addiction because I'm not in school. The influence of peers, they will be hanging out together, and such influence might trigger addiction among the youth. You think of insecurity, just as my colleague mentioned, there could be a kind of initiation into armed robbery gangs, into banditry, processes and other terrorist activities. These are all social implications that are attached to that. In fact, some of them might even drop the schooling. Why? Because it is a time for political, recruitment. And some of them might be recruited into political thuggery because it is the season. Apart from this, you also think of, apart from the economy of the lecturers themselves, businesses have collapsed, especially businesses around the university institutions. There are people who exclusively rely on these particular institutions. When the students are around, they sell their products and they earn a living. And now these seasonal businesses are closed. Tell me, and these are people with families, these are people who need also to survive as Nigerians. So the first thing Nigerian government needs to do is to address education. And you cannot address such without stopping corruption, in which we see top government officials, a regime that campaign, against graft as well as corruption, but is one of the most corrupt, which has also failed to address the educational challenges in the country.
I have to interject here now because we don't have much time. Thank you, Doctor. Now, Jide, in your own opinion, what can be done to salvage the reoccurrence of these strikes?
It's for government to put an end to this. Asuu, let's look at what are the issues. Asuu is asking for better funding for education. Dr. Sharif has talked about it. UNESCO prescribed 26%. I didn't believe that, even assuming we don't consider that we do not have enough, we should not be talking of 8% annual budget to education. That's where we are. Not even up to half of 26%. And we need that funding to expand the infrastructure and sustain. In universities, you need hostels, you need libraries, you need laboratories, you need lecture theaters, you need so many other things.
Accommodation.
Hostels, yes, I've mentioned that. So you also need electricity, you need water, you need all the basic amenities, and it costs a lot of resources to put this together. The golden era of Nigerians, where foreigners come to Nigeria to study. I was in the same class with Nigerians, with Cameroonians, with Chadians, with Beninese, with Togolese. Today, they are not coming. Education tourism is now going to Europe and Ghana and Benin Republic. You will be shocked. Many Nigerian pupils and students are in Niger Republic, are in Togo, are in Benin Republic, are in Ghana. Those who can afford it are in Europe and America. That is the crown of it. That is the crown shame of a country. So government has all it takes to stop this what's called brain drain of students going to Europe and America and Africa to go and study. By investing, in education, meet the Asuu needs, let them call up the strike, and Asuu should also consider something. Let's fashion a win-win situation so that we can get the students back to school. Like Dr. Gali said, it's political season. Keeping these students at home for longer than now, campaigns will still start. Rallies and all of that. these people will metamorphose into criminals, and it's not good for the peace of our society. So let them resolve this issue
once and for all. Yes, we're all tired about it. It's long overdue. Well, that's it for this episode on Nigeria Today, and the topic has been the lingering Asuu strike. It's long overdue. To my guest, Jide Ojo, a public affairs analyst, thank you so much for your thoughts.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. And Doctor, we appreciate you. Thank you very much for your time well spent with us. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
I will also thank you, our viewers, for always keeping the date on the program. You can watch this and other episodes of the program at www.youtube.com/NTA News24Hub. Thank you for watching. I'm Lydia Odijochi, saying see you tomorrow. Same time, same station. Goodbye.